Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Cormid Productions, here to do another rewatch video of Quantum Leap, Season 2, Episode 22, titled M.I.A., the season finale of Season 2. The episode's description reads as follows. Al tells Sam that he has to convince a Navy nurse that her M.I.A. husband is still alive, but Sam keeps getting signals that he has another mission. The episode was directed by Michael Zimberg, who thus far has been responsible for Good Morning Peoria, A Portrait for Troyan, and Maybe Baby. This is easily his best work up until this point. The episode was written by Donald P. Belzerio, and he gets sole writing credit on this one. The episode takes place on April 1st, 1969, and originally aired on May 9th, 1990. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. 1. This is not a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't yet watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then watch my video. Secondly, if you like this video and want to support the channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is an absolute classic episode of the series, and an absolutely important one in the show's tapestry, with a direct connection to the series finale, Mirror Image. It features a fantastic performance by Dean Stockwell. At this point in the series, he has been mostly the comic sidekick, with a few exceptions that really show off his range as an actor. I'm thinking Disco Inferno, Jimmy, Thou Shalt Not, as the best examples of him actually getting a meaty dramatic scene or role. None compared to his work here. Equally good is Scott Bakula, selling his unease and increasing frustration with Al really well. But this is Dean Stockwell's showcase, and Al Calvici's story, that really goes a long way towards telling us who Al really is. This is the definitive Al Calvici episode. Remember all the way back in my discussion of the season premiere, Honeymoon Express? I mentioned the fact that Al could very easily have lied to Sam to pursue his own agenda, which was to make a major change in history so the project wouldn't be shut down. But he doesn't lie. You could almost say that Al would be morally justified in lying to him there, but he doesn't do it. Here he does so in a very big way. Sam leaps in and finds himself dressed as a hooker. He bemoans that he thinks he's leapt into a woman again, which he did last in the 4th episode of the season, What Price Gloria. However, he is not in fact a woman. He hears a walkie-talkie calling for him from his purse, telling him that the suspects were coming. Sam soon finds himself face to face with them. He stares dumbly at them when his walkie-talkie sells him out. The suspects realize that he's a narc, and they raise their guns, ready to shoot him. Oh boy! And credits. The two suspects are played by Pat Skipper and William Shockley. Pat Skipper has 2 appearances on this series, this one and a Season 5 episode titled The Beast Within. I best recognize him from having appeared as Dana Scully's brother on The X-Files. He was not a very pleasant character in that series. He appeared in 4 episodes of that series, which surprised me because I thought he appeared in more. I remember him being a bigger presence than he apparently was. In addition to his appearances there, he also appeared on Briscoe County Jr., an episode of The West Wing as a guy who used to beat up Sam Seahorn and wants to get a stay of execution for a man on death row. Altogether, he has 90 credits to his name. Shockley, meanwhile, has appearances in the movie RoboCop, the infamous Showgirls, and 120 episodes of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. He has 69 acting appearances, a directorial stint, and 12 writing credits. When we come back, a police car rolls on up. Sam dives behind a dumpster to narrowly avoid death, and a shootout ensues, which Sam covers his face during. Tequila, played by Pat Skipper, ends up shot, but Sam's partner, Detective Skaggs, played by Jason Begay, has seemingly made a career out of one-off guest appearances, but seems to have made a home for himself on Chicago PD as a regular. 104 acting credits for him. He is also really good during the course of this episode. When the shooting ends, Skaggs goes and finds his partner Jake, who Sam has replaced. Sam, when he is found, says aloud that he's a man. His partner assumes he has a concussion, rather than Sam being happy that he has not in fact leaped into another woman. Don't worry, Sam, that'll come later. Skaggs believes that Sam's gun jammed on him, as the service weapon he carries has a tendency to do. Sam is still confused both by the leap and having just been involved in a hail of gunfire. Skaggs takes a look at the weapon and is confused to note that the safety is on. When asked by another officer, Skaggs covers for him and tells him that the weapon did indeed jam. Cut to Sam and Skaggs walking to get back towards the car. Skaggs talks about a time he froze up during a similar situation, which is what he is assuming happened to his partner. He happened upon a baby. He knew he had walked into an ambush, but couldn't move a muscle. Just stood there staring at the baby. He says, if you're lucky, you can freeze up once and live to talk about it. As they get into the car, Sam asks him what happened to the baby, and Skaggs changes the subject. It is strongly implied, though never stated outright, that the baby was probably killed during the ambush. Begay does a great job with this monologue. He doesn't get many moments in this episode, as when it comes down to it, the story really isn't about him or the actual mission. But when he gets the moment, he kills it. And also, good job by the creators for not straight out telling us that the baby was killed, trusting the audience to figure that out for themselves. Cut to the locker room, where we have Al's first appearance in the episode at the 6 minute and 30-second mark. Skaggs tells Sam that Lisa wants to beat him, but of course Sam has no idea who that is. Skaggs gives him mild crap about it being disrespectful not to remember his partner's wife. Sam soon finds himself being hazed with a bunch of lingerie in his locker. Sam handles this with aplomb, more so than I would have. He uses the knowledge of his partner's wife against Skaggs in a very amusing way, suggesting that the sexy item might look good on his wife. It's an interesting question whether Al appears here already knowing about Beth. For my mind, no, he doesn't know yet. It hasn't clicked into his mind. He has a cheerful demeanor, which is a far cry from how he looks for almost the remainder of the episode. He gives Sam information about his leap, even hitting the hand link to get more information out of it. For the record, this is a new hand link, but not the finalized version that we will eventually know and love. I think as he's reading, it clicks into place for Al. You can even see a subtle shift in Al, as he seems to realize where and when he is. Sam picks up on this and shows concern for Al. Al tells him that he is there to prevent a woman from making the mistake of a lifetime. Al looks at the hand link, but he's really reciting the information from memory. He no longer has to hit the hand link to get more information. Al tells Sam that the woman's name is Beth and that her husband is M.I.A. He turns out not to be dead, but by the time she learns that, she has already remarried someone else, someone she will meet on April Fool's Day, this day. We hear Al's voice as we cut to Beth, crying while trying to replace her flat tire. I mean, I would probably be crying in a similar situation. Beth is played by Susan Dial. She has 2 appearances on this series, both as Beth, here and in the series finale. She also has 2 appearances on Star Trek Voyager, again as the same character as the Doctor's love interest on that series. She has 62 acting credits in total, 1 directorial credit, and 16 producing credits. She is soon approached by Dirk, and they do a rather remarkable casting job here. Dirk kind of has this villainous appearance, probably something to do with the jaw. He looks like he would be a jerk, even though he doesn't act like it throughout the episode. They sell Al's story here that her marriage to Dirk is a mistake, just on casting alone. He's played by Norman Large, who has appeared in Star Trek The Next Generation, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, and Jag. Curiously, only 28 appearances for Mr. Large. Dirk helps Beth with her tire, and they seem to be hitting it off. Meanwhile, Sam is looking for Beth based off information that Al has obviously given him. Along for the ride is Skaggs, though I'm not sure why Sam brings him at all, to be honest with you. Sam spots Beth and then proceeds to hustle Dirk out of the way, and this is really painful to watch. Like, it's really awkward. He manages to get Dirk out of the way with the help of his partner. Beth and Dirk each think the other is a suspect. Dirk ends up leaving the scene, giving her a card, saying, "I don't know what you did, but if you need a lawyer, I happen to be one." Meanwhile, Skaggs is convinced the entire thing is Jake pulling a April Fool's joke on him, and Beth is left there crying. Cut to Sam hanging out with hippies undercover with Skaggs as he pretends to meditate. He briefly looks to the heavens and asks, "Why am I still here?" Al appears out of nowhere to say that he didn't stop Beth from marrying the sleazy lawyer. Sam defensively says he got them apart, but according to Al, that isn't enough. Beth is going to get the Navy to declare her husband dead. Beth and the lawyer will get married in June. Well, that's kind of fast. In June? April? This June? Okay. April, May, June. That's 3 months away. So they're going to get together after declaring her husband dead and get married? Jesus, Beth, that is really quick. Anyway, moving along. He credits Ziggy with this information, but I'm pretty certain he knows it firsthand. Not for the first time, Sam asks if he's sure that the relationship isn't meant to be. Al tells him that what was meant to be was for Beth's husband to return home and find her there. He then proceeds to lay some truth on Sam for the first time in this episode. But even in telling the truth, it's still an evasion. Telling Sam about his own M.I.A. story, which happens to be this one. He declares he doesn't want that to happen to her husband. Another truthful statement, but we call that a lie by omission. Sam apologizes and says he should have remembered, but Al tells him that the leap switched Cheese's brain, which Al is now very conveniently using to his advantage. Al tells him that it's not his fault, but it will be if he doesn't keep Beth away from the scuzzbucket lawyer. Sam seems unconvinced. He can't keep him away from the lawyer for the next 4 years. Al pipes in to say that Ziggy says he doesn't have to. Beth recently lost a patient that she thought was going to live, and this weekend she will be especially vulnerable. All Sam has to do is get her through the weekend and remind her how much she loves her husband through things that remind her of him, and they should be in the clear at that point. So up until this point in the episode, I had this theory that Al hasn't consulted with Ziggy at all after learning that he could possibly prevent his split from Beth. I'm not so sure Al comes up with this idea solely on his own without some input from Ziggy. But at the same time, would Ziggy help Al with this? Would Ziggy not be objecting to what Al is trying to do here? It should be noted that we have put the politics of the project long behind us, since the last time we saw it was in the season premiere of this season. When Sam tries a similar stunt back in Starcross, there was major interference from the higher-ups. There is no mention of anyone trying to shut Al down here. Of course, we wouldn't see any of that anyway, and it's not like Al would bring that up to Sam. Nevertheless, I would be interested in seeing an alternate version of this episode that specifically shows what was going on back at the project. We're never going to get that, but still, I would like to see it. Anyway, Al thinks if Sam is there, he can be there for her, and he's not someone who's going to take advantage of her. Okay, but Al, there's a major blind spot here. Sam might not take advantage of Beth. In fact, he's not going to. We know that. Sam is a Boy Scout. He's going to stick to the mission. However, what happens when Jake returns? What's to prevent a relationship instead being developed between Jake and Beth after Sam is gone? Sam is going to be the Boy Scout. Jake? Probably not. Unless you just expect Jake to disappear from her life after building a close relationship with her. And now, that sucks. A suspect tries to get past Skaggs. Sam tries to jump on him, but can't because of his numb legs, which he complained about at the beginning of the scene. Ha ha. Nice little comedy break there. We cut to Tequila and Boner hanging out at a bar, having made bail thanks to a woman whose baby they are currently trying to feed alcohol to. Thankfully, they are stopped by said woman. Well, this doesn't speak very much to their judgment, But then again, if they had any kind of judgment, they would probably be in a better situation than the one they are in. It also doesn't speak very well to the woman's judgment for leaving this baby with these two boneheads. Tequila eventually remembers the name of the cop they shot him, but remembers it wrong. He calls them scabs. Uh-oh. We cut to Beth standing out by the ocean. A woman asks him if she can borrow her eyes to locate a sailboat that has her son on it. This woman turns out to be the mother of Dirk. She invites Beth to lunch, but Beth spots Sam and declines the invitation. Sam brings her calla lilies, which she claims to hate. This confuses Sam because this is information he got from Al. Sam convinces her to go with him to lunch so he can explain. At lunch, Sam marvels how cheap everything is. $2 for 2 beers and a quesadilla. Beth isn't impressed by the cheap date reference. I mean, Sam, if you want to take me for a quesadilla and a couple of beers, I'm totally down for it. And I won't complain at all if you call me a cheap date. Sam ends up telling her that he was on a stakeout, which was a bust. He spotted her struggling and decided to go to her rescue. But Dirk was already there. Beth catches on and asks, so yesterday was some elaborate pickup attempt. Afraid so. She's amused by the notion. She ends up asking, so what stopped you after Dirk left? And Sam replies that the M.I.A. bracelet made him feel bad, so he left. But he felt he owed her an explanation. We cut to Al, who's milling about in Beth's house. At this time, we don't know that Al is lying. I mean, I do because I've watched the episode more than a few times. But back then, we had no clue. We should find this behavior very curious if you hadn't already been clued in at this point that something is going on with Al. Beth and Sam return to the house, and Al quickly uses the hand link to open the chamber door so as not to be spotted. But Sam spots him anyway. He doesn't say anything, but gives his friend a long stare. I'm curious why we never hear Sam call him out on this. Beth ends up telling him the story about the patient she lost. A guy with a great smile, but severe burns. He had a will so strong to live that she could feel it. He died anyway. She starts crying, and Sam gives her a long hug while she cries on his shoulder. And Al watches sadly from outside the house. Cut to the locker room, where Skaggs and Sam are getting ready for another stakeout, this time as garbage man. Sam complains about his suit not fitting, but his partner's does. Well, Skaggs is the supervisor. He has to set an example. Sam finds himself staring at his mirror image. Al from behind him tells him that he looks like hell. Sam turns around and says to Al, who looks increasingly crappy throughout the episode, that those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Al is clearly cranky. He asks Sam what he's been doing. Sam defensively tells him that he's been doing Jake's job. Al tells him that his job is to get Beth through the weekend without the ambulance chaser getting into his pants. Sam says he's wondering about that, pointing out that Beth, before he found her the other day, just happened to meet Dirk's mother, which, oh by the way, is information I'm not sure how Sam has. He only witnessed that scene from a distance, and that's a point we'll get back to in a moment. Sam wonders if all the coincidences means that Dirk and Beth are actually meant to get together. That's the way the big cheese wants it. But Alcet points out that God might not be the only one at work here. Sam doesn't believe in the devil, but after Al points a bone-chilling picture of life as a POW, he tells Sam that there is a devil, and we will meet him next season. We cut to Beth, who's eating lunch, and who should happen by but Dirk. This is their first encounter since the flat tire. She reveals that the whole thing with Sam was a pickup attempt. He asks if it was successful. She avoids the question, which is interesting. The little sort of semi-triangle thing that we have going on here is interesting. A love square, if you count Al. We cut to Tequila, and I guess his girlfriend is calling the police to give him a tip to a Detective Scabs. I say, again, uh-oh. We see Skaggs get the information, amused to be called Scabs. Al asks Sam if he got the Ray Charles record, Georgia on My Mind. Sam didn't, because the calla lilies raised enough red flags. Al goes on to say a bunch of things that Beth loved. Sam points out correctly, how is Jake supposed to know any of that? After a while, it would certainly seem suspicious. Al tells him that he has a point, but presses on the idea anyway. Sam tells him that he doesn't know how anyone is supposed to go through what she's going through alone. When she finally trusted him enough to lower her defenses, she cried all night. Al seems disturbed that Sam spent the night with her. Sam gets frustrated, saying that he was holding her, and that was it. And why is Al looking at him like that? Isn't that what he's supposed to be doing instead of Dirk? Al apologizes, and then Sam says no, he's sorry. The leap is bringing up a lot of painful memories for him. And this right here is actually a pretty decent explanation for why Sam doesn't call him out on his weird behavior. He chalks it all up to painful memories having their effect on Al. Sam tells Al that he's going to join his partner, but Al protests. What about Beth? Sam comes back with a frustrated, Al, I can't be with her 24 hours a day. We're grabbing dinner after my shift, so just relax. Everything is going to work out fine. But Al gets a notification, from Ziggy I assume, that Dirk is with Beth now. He tells Sam that he's got to go break that up. Assignment be damned. And so Sam blows off his job, which there's got to be some consequences for that, right? We never hear about them. But then from this point forward, we don't really see much of Jake's life again. We cut to Beth and Dirk at her house. They are soon interrupted by Sam, claiming to be off shift early. Sam says he should have called, but he was thinking they could go for real Mexican food. Dirk clears out of there, but not before a parting shot. Beth explains that they ran into each other at lunch. She says offhand, first the flat tire, then his mother. And then she tells Sam that the woman at the dock was Dirk's mother, and Sam claims that he caught that. Okay, so back to that point. The only way Sam could have known that that woman was Dirk's mother is if Beth told him. He obviously did not catch it from the distance that he was at. And Al didn't tell him because he's the one who told Al. So there is no other way for Sam to have had that information. If she already told him, then why is she telling him again? It's a minor point, but it is certainly an oddity within the script. Sam tells her not to read too much into it, that she's overly romanticizing. And you got to be impressed that I just managed to say that word because that's usually the type of word that I trip over. But anyway, Beth goes to change. Sam looks around. Beth comes back to say that she probably does over-romanticize. Her husband accused her of that all the time. She leaves again, and Sam spots a picture. He picks it up, and it's a picture of a younger Al. Sam, upset, realizes that Al has lied to him for the entire leap. Beth re-enters the scene, and, upset, he says he doesn't think he's supposed to be there. In a panic, Sam leaves. He tells Beth, who is clearly upset, that he will call her later. After the door closes, Sam spots Al, who immediately tries to leave. But Sam runs after him and tells him that if he closes that door, to never open it again. Al exits the door and closes it. Sam tells him, "You know the rules, Al. We can't change our own lives." Oh boy. Okay. What Al does in this episode is terrible, but it comes from a completely human place. We cannot condemn him. If we were in his shoes, wouldn't we try to do the same thing? I don't see a lot of fans jumping on Al for his actions in this episode, and I think they're justified in not doing so. However, Sam Beckett receives a lot of crap for what he does here, with the fans calling him a hypocrite. And if you're in this camp, I'm not even sure I disagree with you. Bringing up Starcrossed again, Sam breaks the rules in that episode. Doesn't give a damn about the committee trying to stop him, to give him a second chance to be with Donna, who stood him up at the altar. Although Al isn't happy about any of that, he ultimately helps him at the cost of his job. He of course gets it back through blackmail, but that's not the point. Hell, in the next 2 episodes, Sam will try and change his personal history in a big, major way. But when it comes to Al, all Sam can say is, "The rules!" Given how the series finale plays out, I'm not even sure the creators disagree with your point of view here. Sam himself will eventually realize that he could have tried to right this wrong for Al. Here's my only counter. Al lies to him. He does not tell Sam the truth. Perhaps if he had done so, Sam might have tried to help his friend out. We don't know either way, but Al couldn't risk Sam not helping him. It was too important to him. Al reveals that Beth was his one true love, and that not working out is why none of his other marriages ever worked. So I bring you back, all the way back, to my Honeymoon Express video, in which I said I had a theory about Al. Clearly Al was always a walking perv. Or maybe not. Maybe he was just exaggerating. But his expressed attitudes throughout the series is that he doesn't believe in monogamy. I think he does. Or did. But between his life as a POW and the loss of Beth, it changed his outlook. He became a man who no longer believed in love. So he became a serial cheater. Even as he recovered in some ways, thanks to Sam, who helped him through his time as an alcoholic, he didn't recover all the way. Great work in the scene by Stockwell and Bakula. Al continues to insist this is what Sam is here to do, but Sam doesn't think so. He asks if there maybe was another important reason for him to be there, but Al has never once considered that there might be another reason for Sam to be here, and thus almost dooms Sam to stay here forever. And the reason, it turns out, is Skaggs is about to walk into an ambush. He finds himself staring at a baby. He's frozen. Doesn't move when Tequila and Boner are behind him with a gun. History is repeating itself, but he's already used up his one chance to freeze and not die. In the original timeline, Skaggs died here, but this time, Sam appears to the side of them with a shotgun. They spot him, but not in time before they are shot to death by Sam Beckett. Skaggs, not caring about his own safety at all, goes to protect the baby. He cries and tells the baby that he's going to be okay, that it'll be fine. Nothing is going to happen to him. The fact that his own life nearly ended isn't even a consideration at this point. History has been made different this time around. Outside Beth's house, late at night, which I gotta wonder why did Sam and Al come back here? Al tells him that he never fed any theory into Ziggy except his own. Sam tells him that he knows and that it's okay. Sam has forgiven his friend. Question: what's to stop Sam from trying to help his friend now? He hasn't leaped yet. You can make the argument that he torched his relationship with Beth, but I don't think he couldn't come back from that. Hell, he could walk across the street, knock on the door, and tell her that he knows Al is alive, which more or less is, spoiler alert, what he does in the series finale. Sam suggests that he hasn't leaked yet because the big cheese is giving him a chance to say goodbye, something Al doesn't initially want to do, but he agrees to do so. We see Beth alone with Al. He's there to say goodbye. He's trying to talk to her, and he thinks for a moment that she heard him, but she hasn't. She puts on the record Georgia on My Mind by Ray Charles, which is a song that was referenced earlier. In the original DVD releases, that music was replaced by generic background music. A crime, because this music provides a direct connection to the finale. Roku, for the record, has the original version. They begin to dance. Al talks, hoping he can get through. Begs her to wait for him, and then Sam leaves. We don't see it for one of the few times in the series. Beth stops dancing after Al is gone, leaving us to wonder, as she cries, if she somehow sensed that Al was there, after all. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. A true classic. One of the great episodes of the series. Fantastic performances from its leads, Dean Stockwell and Scott Bakula, but also some pretty great turns from its guest cast. An important, unskippable episode in every way. Great work from all involved. Anyway, that's all I got for you for this video. Next week we will be taking a look at the Season 3 premiere, The Leap Home Part 1, which is another great one. Also, some additional news. The new Quantum Leap revival is set to air this September, and I, of course, will be covering that series. That's not long from now. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Corman Productions Facebook page. You can buy something from the Corman Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.